We'll start the broadcast now, and we'll let people in. Good morning, everyone. Let us all welcome our facilitator for today, Mr. Eric Lim.
Hi, good morning everyone. Before I start, I just want to say malaki ang pasasalamat ko na madami sa atin na mga educators ay nandito ngayon. I think it's very important for us to get together during this time of, the quarantine and be able to adapt to the new learning environment. Okay, so let me start off by sharing my screen. So I just want to say good morning to everyone. Again, big thank you. So let me share my screen. Okay. So for today, we will be discussing measuring learning outcomes. Okay, so what does it mean to measure learning outcomes? We're gonna go through that today. Okay, so again, this is the Heroes 2021 project, and I thank you for joining us. Okay, so let's start. So just a little background on myself. My name is Eric Lim. I'm from Metro Manila also. I'm taking my master's in communication degree from the Ateneo. I'm also a communications lecturer for Thames International. So mainly I teach communication-based subjects. So nandito po yung mga media theory, communication theory, oral communication, and whatnot. Okay. I'm also a co-founder of the English blog. So basically, we cater to English-specific teachers and, talk about some educational frameworks when it comes to language teaching. Okay, so I have placed here my contact details. So you can contact me at a.lim@thems.edu.ph in case you have any further questions with today's session and whatnot. Okay, so I hope we have a fruitful morning/afternoon and that we learn a lot from each other. Okay, so I just want to go through today's agenda. It will be fairly simple. So first, let us define formative and summative assessments. So basically, we just want everyone to be on the same page when discussing today's topic. So I will be discussing formative and summative assessment in such a way that it will put us all on the same plane of understanding. Okay. Next, we will talk about integrating digital tools and paano po gamitin ang internet and multimedia content in assessing our students' learning. Then we will talk about academic integrity and honesty. So as educators, it's very important for us that our students have some sort of academic integrity such that na lahat ng submission po nila, lahat ng output will come from them. Okay. Next is giving feedback. So we'll talk about how to give feedback in an online environment, which I believe is very important, especially with asynchronous learning, because again, we will be limited when it comes to live session teaching. Then finally, fact-checking. So fact-checking will be for us educators in order to, utilize tools to check our information that we give our students. Okay. So let's start off. I'm keeping my chat open and the Q&A. However, I will not be addressing them as soon as I see them because of time constraints natin today. Okay, so you have me from 11 a.m. to 12:30. Again, welcome to the program. So I just want to share a very powerful quote by Sir Jed Santos of EduRescue. This quote really summarizes what's happening right now, which is the correct innovation adjusts to the audience it serves. So what does this mean? Basically, what we have now is, medyo minadali. This is online learning, biglaan tayo nag-shift because of the pandemic. However, with the trend of education since its conception, I think early 2010 or like earlier this decade, we were trending towards blended learning. So whatever might have happened, if hindi nangyari ang pandemic, learning would go towards this trend also. Ngayon lang, na fast track lang tayo konti. So what we're doing now is basically we're adjusting immediately. Pero if the pandemic didn't happen, again, we would have time to actually go through the process of transitioning from face-to-face traditional classroom to online learning. Okay? So let's start off by doing a very short activity. Okay, so I want to showcase one of the applications you can use to assess learning. So I want you to follow this, the instruction on screen. Then I want you to submit. This is open also to our Facebook participants. So please do try it out. So go to menti.com and use the code 405275. So I'll give you like maybe 2 to 3 minutes to do this. Okay, so I'll just open it on my screen also so that everyone can see the instructions. Okay, so we have responses. So I want you to try. I'm going to submit my own also. So get your phones, get your laptops. Okay. If you're using a phone, you can use your phone. Go open your Google Chrome tab or your internet. Okay. So go to menti.com. So when you join, you will be presented with an enter code page, then enter the code. Okay. Okay, so we have a lot of answers na Google form. Okay. Google Forms, worksheet. So I'm going through this at the same time. So quizzes, word wall, quizzes, yes. So we currently have 76 respondents now. Okay. So I'll give you maybe 1 more minute. Okay, I think we have too much responses. I think my application I don't think it's going to input na. I think it's in a second slide. Okay, did it anticipate? Okay, so thank you very much for your responses. So let's see if I can go through most of it. Let's see. Okay, so ang daming responses. Hindi na siya nag-present. Okay, so we have our limitations when it comes to online teaching. Okay, so that was Mentimeter. So a lot of you placed Google Forms. Okay, so Google Forms, just for those who are not aware, Google Forms is a survey assessment tool made by Google, which is effectively used to conduct objective or subjective summative assessments. In short, mga multiple choice questions, essays. Pero what we're here to talk about is that there are actually other tools we can use and utilize as educators. So the idea today for our session is we're not gonna directly tell you how to construct these, but rather to give you an idea or other ideas on how to assess learning outcomes. So that's my objective for today. So at the end of this session, I hope na you somehow think of different ideas on how to conduct your assessments aside from Google Forms. Okay. So let's first discuss the difference between a formative and summative assessment. Okay. So we utilize these assessments to measure learning outcomes. So when we're setting up our asynchronous classes, it's very important that we take into account these two factors of assessment making. Okay. So let's just discuss and talk about some differences. Okay. So formative assessment. Okay. So formative assessment is mainly used to check for students' current understanding. Okay. So everything here in this slide is basically layman's term or medyo summarized na siya. Hindi na siya in-depth details kasi I just want everyone to get onto the same plane of understanding para nagkakaintindihan na tayo. Okay, so first, it's to check for students' current understanding. So there are different ways to do this. Either you can check for activate students' prior knowledge, check if they're going through the materials and whatnot. Okay. The next, it's used to track progress of the students and how they are constructing the knowledge. I think this is one of the most important factors here. So when it comes to formative assessments, and online classes, it's very important that we check how the students are understanding the lessons. So very important ang knowledge construction natin. Now, mas mahirap i-monitor ngayon online because we can't see them face-to-face. So marami kasing non-verbal cues may express ang students kung hindi nila naiintindihan ang certain topic. So this is where our formative assessments come in. Okay. Next is it's composed of learning outcomes in between modules. So ideally, I have a bonus tip on the bottom. Ideally, an online class or an asynchronous class would have 1 to 3 formative assessments within one module. So a lot of schools have decided to shift to modular learning. So basically, each lesson will be compiled into a module that can be done maybe in 1 week, 2 weeks. It depends on your syllabus. So for example, ako po, usually when I make a module, it's good enough for 1 week. So weekly module po ako. So what I do is in between my module, I place in 1 or 2 or 3 formative assessments. Okay. So next we have summative. Okay. Summative is probably, if narinig ng mga students, dito sila matatakot. Okay. So it checks for overall understanding of a student for a certain module or a unit. So basically, it's the summarized understanding, it's the constructed knowledge na. It's the end-all activity. Okay, so usually there are some ways you can conduct summative. These are the most common ones. We have our midterms or quarterly tests for K-12. We have our finals papers. Okay, long tests, quarterly exams, group presentations. Okay, you name it. So I used to hate these tests, but so in high school growing up, pag may ganitong test, nakainis kasi yan, ang daming aaralin. So what's happening now with asynchronous is that we will do this on a more regular basis, although smaller ang context or smaller ang content ng exams natin, okay, to fit in our modules. So additionally, because of that, it consumes a longer time frame of the syllabus. So basically, some teachers would prefer having a summative assessment after 2 modules. Some teachers, like me, when I'm teaching undergrad or college, mas gusto ko po na summative assessments ko weekly or every other week. Okay, it will depend on how long or how much content I am covering. So it's very important that we know which tools we are using or what kind of assessment we are doing to know which tools to use. Okay. So the most important thing here is to understand what we want our students to learn. Okay. The most important thing with asynchronous class is that ma-establish po natin kung ano yung gusto natin matutunan ng ating mga estudyante. Okay. So once we have a clear definition of what we want our students to learn, we can design our formative and summative assessments. Now, although it may sound simple, it may actually get a little complicated, okay? Because when we do our assessments, like formative and summative, now that we are doing online classes, very important po ang creativity natin. So I'm actually in the EduRescue program also in the Facebook page, and I've been seeing really creative inputs from the different teachers. So I saw may mga teachers na gumagamit ng app like yung they cartoonize their face, then place it in the classroom. Ganun. Very creative po mga yon. Now let's take this creativity and put it in our assessments. Okay. So why do we do this? Okay, mainly to engage the students. We want our content to be engaging since it's asynchronous. Karamihan ng content po natin magagaling online. So it's very important po na motivated ang students natin. So we're designing our assessments in such a way na enjoyable po para sa kanila din. Okay? So now we integrate digital tools and learning activities. Okay? Digital tools and learning activities are very powerful and very essential, let's say, weapons we have right now during the pandemic. Kasi digital online tools can be used if used effectively, can be good ways to assess our students' understanding, may it be formative or summative. Okay? So different online multimedia tools can be used to conduct your assessments. Okay? So it will depend on how you want to do it. So let's start, okay? So integrating multimedia tools. So again, we integrate our multimedia and digital tools not only for the engagement, pero not only also for motivation, but also kasi very rich ang content na nasa internet. So if you use the internet regularly, you know na if you want to look for certain information po, you want to do some research, very easy lang. We go on Google, we just search. Madaming research paper po dyan, madaming videos, madaming articles, madami pong discussion forums. Now, we will use these tools in order to teach our students. So what's happening now po is that us educators right now are becoming some sort of facilitators. Kasi we facilitate po and we gatekeep which content the students can consume and should consume. So it's very important po that we look for the right content and the right digital tool. Okay. They also provide groundwork for critical analysis of widely accessed content. For example, madami po sa atin nasa Facebook. Okay. So if we go through Facebook, you will notice that a lot of those posts are very, opinionated po, subjective. Let's say when it comes to history, when it comes to science, maraming information po dyan na medyo subjective, medyo debatable po yung topic. And these are actually very effective learning materials you can utilize in order to construct the students' critical understanding. Again, with online tools, we are aiming for the depth of understanding as well as the richness of the content instead of the quantity. So yung pinaka-important po natin ngayon na content is quality content. Okay? So it's important that at an early age, the students start building a very critical or analytical standpoint of view of maybe social issues or maybe, historical probabilities and whatnot. Very important po na may analytical skill ang students natin so that when they go to work or when they grow up, if they go to college, prepared po sila. Okay? We want to build a notion that every multimedia can be a source of educational content. Okay? So it will really depend on how we frame our content. So this may look like a simple Facebook post, but if we frame it in such a way na we can use it for example, math or maybe for English. So for example, maybe may article po ang let's say New York Times. Okay, medyo mahirap po. Pero since sanay po ako sa college degree, so for example, my New York Times article po or maybe my Philippine Star article. You can ask your students to look at that article, then write a response paper. Okay. Madami pong paraan para makonduct ang ating assessments. Okay. So, lastly, your essential materials should still be present. So, if you like doing PowerPoint, if you like doing the traditional Manila paper, if you like doing the whiteboard, it can still be present. Okay, you can still record yourself doing it since I've seen a lot of you have done some on-screen recording already. Multimedia tools, yung mga tools po natin online, yung mga content, are used to supplement understanding. So these should not be the only source of content, but rather they supplement. So you still have to do your discussions. So if you want to record yourself discussing the topic, you should still do that. So for example, what you can do is for maybe show a video. Okay, then after the video, have a discussion with the students with regards to what the video is about. Okay, what the students are expected to learn, what the key points of that video. So it's very important po na we still keep the essence of our teaching content. Okay. So here are some ideas for formative assessment. Now, again, my goal here today is not to instruct you on how to make these assessments, but rather help you form ideas. Okay? Very important po na alam natin ang gusto natin gawin before we get into actually making these. Kasi po, actually, once you know what you want your students to learn and how you want to plot out your lessons, half of the battle is won. Actually, 75% na po. Kasi yung online tech tools po, yung in-experiment, if you yourself cannot access it, you can always ask for help from other educators, from your family who are more tech savvy, or maybe, you can go online and search, paano ba gamitin yung ganito? Okay. So one example, Number one, we can watch you can let the students watch a YouTube video that is connected to your content. So for example, you're talking about history, maybe you can show a video about Philippine history from YouTube, then have the students submit a reaction paper after watching the YouTube video, and then after that, you discuss. So yung pagsusulat po ng reaction paper, that is what I would consider a formative assessment. Kasi po, you will be able to see how the student understood the video. It doesn't even have to be a paper. So most of you have gone through Google Classroom. Maybe after showing a video, you can ask the students to use the discussion sa baba po, sa comment section, what they thought of the video. Or maybe you can add in some guide questions before they watch the video para po may framework or may lens po sila parang salamin po while watching the video. Okay. So number two is using Mentimeter to activate prior knowledge. Mentimeter was the application I showed you when this session started. So yung nakita niyo po, go to menti.com, enter the code, blah, blah, blah. This can be used to activate prior knowledge or to engage the students. Okay. So basically, Mentimeter is like an open forum opinion poll wherein you can ask a question or ask certain questions, then have your students submit their responses asynchronously. Now, that's not the only use for Mentimeter. You can also use this in the middle of your classes. Now, for example po, you gave the students a reading material. Okay, so they've read. You assume they've read. Once they have read, you can use Mentimeter to check for understanding. Maybe you can ask one critical question based on the reading. Okay, so if you're doing El-Fili, if you're teaching Noli Me Tangere, okay, so ano po yung mga key points? Matagal na po yan. Let's say you want to ask about Ibarra or something sa action po ni Ibarra, pwede nyo po ilagay sa Mentimeter, then have the students submit a reaction or again, discussion board. So there are different ways of doing this. Next, number three. Okay, this one, I like doing this. So have the students look for memes. Okay, so let me define memes. Memes are very, I would say satirical or ano po sila. Online content, usually it comes in photo format that makes fun of certain social realities. So for example, may nakakatawa po about yung history natin. Ang meme po ay ginagamit para make it lighter, make it more accessible, and make it more understandable to the general public. So memes are funny content. They are fun content. Very effective po siya when it comes to engaging your students to look for their own content as well as testing their understanding if pakagawa sila ng sarili nila. Okay, so what I like doing is, for example, I give a reading material or a video. Then after po ng video, I will ask them to look for a meme related to the content I just showed. Okay, using this, very casual po siya, very easy for the students to actually do some, small Google search lang. And it's very good kasi po, you will have them explain it afterwards. So medyo analytical po siya, which is nice also kasi we want to build their analytical knowledge also. Next is discussion board and exchanging comments. This is probably the most traditional way when it comes to online classes, but it's still effective. So I've seen discussion boards actually take really good effectiveness on the students. There are some discussion boards wherein you post a really good question na parang is ano yung pangalan ni Ibarra sa El-Fili? I'm so sorry, ang tagal na po. Ang character po ba ni si Bon Ibarra ay protagonist or antagonist based on what you've read? So for example, doon po yung context ng question. Very controversial siya. Kasi didefine po natin si Ibarra as, let's say, a protagonist. Pero we're questioning if he's actually the kontrabida. So you can have the students talk about this, okay? Simon, sorry po, I'm really sorry. I'm trying to think for other examples. Yun po yung nagpa-pop out ngayon. So it's very important that we post questions that are highly engaging as well as very relatable to our content. So you ask if kontrabida ba or main character po ba, then ask why, okay? The students would have to defend their points. I found that asking why when it comes to discussion boards is very, very effective. So for example, you post a question, very simple question, then you ask why. Okay, so for example, ano yung sa math, yung triangle, the Pascal's triangle, letter C is the shortest side of the triangle. Why? Okay, then the students would have to explain. So when you ask the question why, it becomes very analytical. Okay, there are other ways to frame this. This is just one of my key ideas. Next is using social media. Okay, social media. Social media is very important when it comes to online teaching. So using social media as a means to deliver online content. Okay, so using social media to post short vlogs in relation to the topic. You can actually do this as, for example, a short project. For example, you talked about a certain, wala na po maisip na example. Let's say you're teaching English, okay? You're teaching your students a topic about prepositions, okay? You can use social media to ask the students create a vlog post, a video blog post about how to get to their school. Then maybe post it on Facebook. I'm so sorry. Maybe post it on Facebook. Then, have them comment on each other's work, or at least, comment on each other's work, share content. Okay. Lastly, I'm so sorry about my cat. Next is peer reviewing. So peer reviewing is actually a very important and very accessible way of doing a formative assessment. Okay. So if you do this during your face-to-face classes, you can easily transition this online. How do you do this? Each student will be assigned a partner if it's even number. Then, submit the papers to them, send the papers to them. Okay, then they check each other's papers, then return. Okay, so the important thing with peer review is you provide a grading rubric. Now, I've experienced there are some teachers who peer review without giving a rubric. Now, rubrics are very important. The students have the tendency to read the rubrics, okay? Para alam po nila paano i-grade ang students nila, ang classmates nila. So peer reviews, again, very effective tools when it comes to online learning. So let's just go over. Next, here are some examples. So these are the ones I'm currently doing. So these topics will focus on communication theories and communication media, okay? So this one is a formative assessment which I asked the students. So very theoretical po ang lesson namin because this is communication theory. So a lot of theoretical concepts, a lot of theory, a lot of science, social science lessons. So instead of sticking to writing a reaction paper, I asked the students to create their own communication diagram. Kasi po, before this, nag-present po ako ng mga theoretical communication diagrams which are commonly used when it comes to communication. So yung mga transmission model, yung mga one-way po, ganon, message, how the message transfers. So instead of asking them to write a reaction paper on how they can see this in modern times, I asked them, create your own diagram. So from there, I can check if they understood the lessons, specifically ano po yung components ng communication flow or model, then have the creation of the communication flow into their own understanding. So very important po ang sariling understanding ng student. Okay. So I asked them, they can draw it, okay, if they're not very techy. If they're tech savvy, okay, maybe they can use Adobe Photoshop, they can Adobe Illustrator. Madami pong applications ang magagamit ng mga estudyante natin. Okay? Again, they can just draw it. Okay lang po sa akin. Mas important po yung output nila na makikita ko po yung pagkakaintindi nila. Okay? Next, we have Mentimeter po. So, as I mentioned, Mentimeter can be used as some sort of a discussion board, albeit anonymous po. So Mentimeter, if you notice the submissions a while ago, wala pong mga pangalan natin. So we don't know who submitted what. Okay, so one thing I asked the students here is actually, okay, I asked the students about how important is social media in their lives. Okay. Then I asked them to post on Mentimeter, just like what we did a while ago. Now, for my formative assessment, I asked the students to go through their classmates' posts, then answer these questions according to the overall summary of the classes output on the usage of social media in their lives. So this is to summarize the points and analyze. Okay? So here is an example of a meme. Okay. So again, very funny po yan. So who would win? A seafaring crew covered in impenetrable armor led by strong and a dedicated navigator versus some half-naked boys. So medyo hindi naman po offensive, pero nakakatawa siya. Pero sa katotohanan, totoo po nangyari to. Di ba po? Nanalo po si Lapu-Lapu against the... Nanalo. Yes. Okay. So medyo it's very spoof po. Pinagtatawanan niya po yung context, pero pinagtatawanan niya po ang katotohanan. Okay? So maybe you can ask the students to go online and look for a meme that summarizes your understanding of the discovery of the Philippines, then explain the context. So ideally, after the students posts this or submits this, may konting explanation naman. Okay? So here, they would have to use their objective understanding. Okay, sa 1521, ganito po ang nangyari. So ito po yung napili kong meme or photo to summarize history. Okay, excuse me. So the most important aspect when we're doing formative assessments using online tools is we clarify instructions. Okay, make sure the instructions we place online are what is expected of the students. So we need to set their expectations na po. Very important po ang klaro ang instructions natin. Kasi po, hindi na po ito katulad ng face-to-face na the students can go, ma'am, paano po ulit gawin yung ganito? It will be counterproductive and asynchronous po tayo. Hindi po tayo agad makaka-respond. So it's very important that we clarify our instructions and what we expect from them. So what I like doing is once I place up my weekly module, I go through the weekly module and pretend I'm the student. Will I understand everything? Okay. Next. So here we have the controversy of grading formative assessments. So ideally and theoretically, a lot of researchers say formative assessments should not be graded. Now, I personally grade my formative assessments. And I will tell you po why I grade it. Okay. So the way I grade my students po, very different po ako mag-grade. Ang grading system ko po ay from 0 to 100. So we build po. So may percentage po yan, ganito. Each content or each summative assessment plus participation will have a percentage, corresponding percentage. Now, because of the pandemic, I really want to empathize with the students. Marami pong estudyante na hindi maka-access ng online content ng tuloy-tuloy. Not everyone has the regular access we have, even if nasa NCR po tayo. So we have to talk about the Philippine infrastructure na hindi pa po perfect yung online connection ng buong NCR and the whole Philippines. So we have to empathize. Now, I grade the formative assessments to give the students a chance to pull up their grades. Okay? So for example, yung meme na to po. Okay? Very simple siya, pero may analytical context po. You want the students to analyze and, express their current understanding of why this was an appropriate photo. I would give them some bonus points, maybe 1 or 2. So this is just a way for me to help my students pull up their grades, through grading the formative assessments, as well as, encourage them to submit their output. Kasi po, students are more inclined to submit a graded assessment rather than an ungraded one. So if, for example, nilagyan nyo po ng bonus point or graded ang discussion board nyo, mas may engganyo ang students na mag-participate. Okay? Not a proven science. Okay? Please do not quote me on that. Hindi pa po siya proven, pero I found it very effective. So once I tell my students, okay, this will be graded or bonus, the students will be actively engaging compared to without saying if it's graded or not. Okay. So that's why I grade by formative assessments. Maybe after the pandemic, when we go to blended learning, yung half online, half face-to-face, maybe I'll stop grading it po. But right now, I think our students, as educators, we have to understand them yung difficulties na dinadaanan nila. So may mga students po na baka hindi makasubmit ng output kasi po may personal problems. So ideally, hindi po tayo nagsaset ng deadlines, pero minsan required po. Pag hindi sila makasubmit ng certain deadline, maybe we can give them a chance to pull up their grades even if they haven't submitted. Okay, maybe you can give them additional formative assessments and whatnot. Okay. Next, we go to summative. Okay, my favorite. So summative assessments, again, these are assessments done after a certain module, a certain unit, or maybe a certain quarter, a certain minsan sa high school po, tandaan ko, is usually dictated siya. Dapat by a certain time period na cover nyo na yung number of topics na to. So, yun po ang mga summative assessments natin. Now, when it comes to online learning, we have to break our summative assessments down. We might still have our quarterly exams or long tests, but more importantly, we have summative assessments after our modules para magkuha po natin or makita po natin ang pagkakaintindi, overall construction and understanding ng students sa certain topic. Okay, this is also to help them in the long run when it comes to their long tests, quarterly exams. Okay, so summative assessments po, these in online environment will be shorter in terms of time frame, but will also have long time periods. Okay, so this is to provide them an opportunity to learn and check their own understanding as well. Okay, so here are some examples. Okay, number one, have the students watch a video or movie online, then ask them to prepare a graphic organizer, maybe a brainstorming map or a mind map. Okay, mind map is, if you go on Google, you search for a mind map. Basically, it connects ideas together and talks about how ideas are formed. Okay, then it can be turned into a term paper, a unit paper, a module paper. Okay, for example, may major requirement po kayo na paper, pwede nyo po umpisahan sa graphic organizer, which is to organize their content in a way na graphical form. Number two is to create a vlog. Okay, I found that asking the students to create a vlog is very interesting. Kasi po, marami pong sa atin mga estudyante gusto maging vloggers. So yung mga estudyante po natin na mahilig mag Mobile Legends or mahilig mag computer games, maybe they have this need to be a social influencer or media influencer. So when you ask them to create a vlog, they'll be interested po kasi malilive out po nila yung fantasy nila na maging media influencer. So we ask them to create vlogs. Okay? So vlogs, madami po yan sa ating mga celebrities and social media influencers, and some of them, they become celebrities because of their vlogs. Okay? So ask the students to make their own based on the topics you present to them. Next, group presentations on certain topics, still effective, okay? But group presentations have to be done in a different way. If you have the opportunity to do live classes or Zoom classes, yung live class, so Google Meet, Zoom, Jitsi, iba-ibang apps, we can ask the students to present certain topics. So weeks before, we present to them kung ano yung pe-present po nila, so that during the live class, they just have to present it. Or maybe you can ask the students to record, okay? So PowerPoint has recording features. Applications have some applications have voice-over features. Sorry, again. Some applications have voice-over features that would help the students submit their outputs. Next, they can create a brochure. Okay, so here we can ask the students to either draw their brochure or have them do it on the computer. So if marunong po sila mag-photo edit, they can create a brochure online. Okay, finally, debates. Okay, debates online. More or less, this has to be done in a live session, but it can be used as a synchronous summative assessment. So maybe you have a certain point, we have pros and cons, agree and disagree, then you become the facilitator. Then based on that, you grade the students. Excuse me. So you don't really have to follow these, but these are just some ideas. I just hope, again po, is you come up with your own ideas, then think, how will this content na originally I discussed in person be delivered in an asynchronous class or an online content? Excuse me po. Okay. So very important po ang transition natin as well as the modality of education these days. Okay. So next po. Okay, so here are some examples. So first we have our summative assessment. So this one is a vlog. So I talked about communication as a principle, as a theory, and as practice. Then I asked the students to create a vlog to elicit or to share their own understanding. So I asked them to be creative, okay? So I posted some questions here that they can use as guide questions in making their vlogs. Then if you check here sa format po, I always specify my instructions at the end. Okay? So that wala na pong tanong and hindi na balik-balik. Okay? So this change po. Tinanggal ko po yung deadline. Okay? So I've decided to remove some of my deadlines in order to, depending on the amount of content I'm asking them to cover, I remove my deadlines. So if it's a short, simple exercise, I can have a deadline. If ganito po na medyo major siya, or for example, 10% po siya ng grading ko, I would actually remove the deadline. Kasi po, it's to give them time in order to not only go over the content, but also form a better understanding by going through the next few modules. So here is another one. This is actually a response paper. So here, similar to the vlog, same construction. I placed guide questions, okay? These guide questions are here to help the students respond to my paper, respond to my content. Kung ano yung hinihingi ko po sa kanila. Then format, again, I posted at the bottom. So I want to show an example of something that you can use in a high school context. So this is a talk given by Sir Ambeth Ocampo in TEDx Diliman on liberating ourselves from the past. So I'll show maybe 1 to 2 minutes of the video. Okay, so if you post it like this, medyo mabagal po. So I will open YouTube. No ads. Sorry, yes, let me fix that. Okay, so when you are sharing screen, make sure to check the share computer sound. Okay, this should be better.
When I started my work, I've been doing Rizal for longer than most people in this crowd are alive. I discovered that Rizal's greatest misfortune was that he became national hero of the Philippines. They shot him. And when you think about it, Rizal is somebody we think about, we talk about, but we don't really know him very well. Before the war, Rizal's face was everywhere. It was on cigarettes, it was on cigars. San Miguel Corporation even had a Cerveza Rizal, which is now gone. Today we have his name on a bank. If you build a house, you have Rizal Cement. If you are cooking in a kitchen, you have Rizal matches. So when you think about it, we have Rizal from birth. You can be born in a Rizal hospital. And when you die, you can go to a Rizal funeral home. This one, their catchphrase is the funeral home where people are dying to go. Anyway, I realized at some point that Rizal is everywhere, but he's nowhere. We see him on money, on 1 peso. We spend it, but we hardly look. And that's why it reminded me, in 2002, there was a group called the Pangitiin si Ninoy movement. They wrote to the central bank governor asking that we change the 500 peso bill because Ninoy was not smiling. And because I was consultant to the Bangko Central, they asked me, why should we make Ninoy smile? And I looked at all our money. Our heroes never smile, so why should we make him smile? But eventually, they had to give in, so in 2010, they made him smile. And not only did they make him smile, they put his wife in there too, and their son actually signed the paper bill. So it's a whole family affair. Ang kulang na lang si Chris and Bimbi. No? So 25 years ago, in 1990, I published a book which is still in print. It's called Rizal Without the Overcoat, and I stripped him of the overcoat because I wanted Rizal to smile. My friend saw this PowerPoint earlier, and he says, did you Photoshop that? I said, no. That's the only picture we have of him smiling. And I looked at all the pictures, and I wondered, Rizal is here on the right, playing with his friends. We have him here with drunken neighbors. He's the guy on the right with the armor and the flute. These are pictures you will never see in a textbook. And why will...
Okay po. So I just showed 3 minutes of the video. So you have an idea po na YouTube can be used for online content. Okay. So I'm sorry for the technical delay, technical difficulties a while ago. Na-alt tab po siya. Na-close ko siya. Okay. So after that, maybe once you show your students the video, maybe you can ask the students to write an answer. How was Rizal perceived during his time? What were some of his notable contributions? Do you believe that Rizal is rightfully recognized as a national hero? So controversial question. Okay. So this is summative assessment. Maybe you can place this at the end of talking about Rizal's life, then have them watch the video, then write the paper. Okay. So you can see how I organize my content. You can also put this in the middle. Maybe before you start discussing, Rizal's life. Okay, so you show the video, discussion po, then ask them to write a paper after. So you could go online, go on YouTube. Marami pong videos, maraming TED Talks na maybe students can enjoy. So this one, I actually enjoyed the video. I actually watched the whole video. Pero po, yung questions ko, ginawa ko pong summary because I'm sure you will have to go through other content as well besides from this video. It's important na hindi lang po yung video na yon ang only source of information natin. May discussion po tayo after or before. Okay? So now we talk about academic integrity. Now, academic integrity has been a long-standing problem in the field of education. So what do you mean by academic integrity? So this is where, plagiarism comes in, cheating, it's very important po na our students practice academic integrity. Okay? So the most important step I learned and I have experimented and I think would be effective in all educational contexts is to, prior to starting your class, is that you have to establish an academic integrity or a code of conduct na within the classroom. So when you introduce the class sa Google Classroom po, baka may additional material kayo that talks about the code of conduct within the class. So you have to elicit what you expect from the students, okay? For example, whatever content I post online should not be shared outside of this classroom. If you are caught sharing, you will be suspended, or you talk about the consequences as well. Okay, it's very important that you talk about the consequences. But most importantly, we have to kailangan po natin i-emphasize na ang academic integrity ay para po sa kanilang advantage. Kasi po, if the students are, honest, they follow instructions, they don't cheat, they don't plagiarize, mas malaki po ang matutunan nila. Mas marami silang matutunan, and mas complete po ang understanding nila. Okay? So, one suggestion or workaround I practice during online is I do not give objective multiple choice questions as much. I still do, but it's not the bulk of my exams. So to avoid cheating, the main technique I like employing is to do a twofold question, which is both objective and subjective. Okay. Now, what do I mean by objective and subjective type questioning? So sa isang question po, may dalawang components. Ang objective po ay ang totoong kaalaman. So the the textbook understanding, then their personal understanding. So here is an example. Okay. So instead of a multiple choice question, okay, I integrated it into an essay. Okay. What are the books Jose Rizal is famous for, and what impact did these books leave on our society, culturally, socio-politically, economically? So medyo graduate level po ang question. You can simplify it. What is or are the books Jose Rizal is famous for, and why? Okay. So you turn it into an essay. So instead of asking multiple choice question na A, B, C, D, you ask them, what are the books? So sulatin po nila yung mga books. Tapos, ano po yung impact? Yung personal understanding nila based on what they've read, what they understood, and how you discussed it. Okay? So very important po yan. This is to avoid cheating. Okay? So for example, you are conducting your test in Google Forms. Let me tell you, madali po hindi mo madali mag-cheating. Medyo may effort po. Pero like for example, for me, na medyo tech savvy, kaya ko po mag-cheat ng mabilisan. Okay? Even if you have an external application that tracks my Google movement, I can still go around it. Okay? There are ways to go around it po. So that is why we have to make sure na our questions are cheat-proof. Now, we will not get this the first time. Okay? There may be times na we resort back to our multiple choice questions. Pero eventually, when we start practicing creating these types of questions, na twofold questions, masasanay po tayo. So at the end, I found it more effective to do these types of questions than actually doing multiple choice question. Medyo nakakapagod lang sa side ng students, but again, they're typing. So it's not really, hindi naman po ganun nakakapagod, pero nakakapagod siya analytically. Okay. So avoid multiple choice questions. You can still have it if it's necessary, but make the bulk of your questions more essay-oriented, short answer-oriented na. Okay. Kasi po, let me tell you, when I was in high school, when I used to cheat, so I'm sorry for my teachers here. So, of course, I was a student once. May mga topics po na hindi ko na aral, na minsan mag-cheating po. Gumagamit po ako ng table kahit Zoom class. So for example, nasa Zoom class po tayo, tapos may hindi ako alam. Maybe I can message my classmate, if A yung answer, touch mo yung upper left ng table. Pag B yung upper right, C lower left, B lower right. Marami pong cheating styles. Okay? Dati po, nung high school ako, cheating style ko, sinusulat ko po yung answer sa ilalim ng medyas ko. So it's good that we are aware of these cheating styles. Okay, I'm sure you've caught your students cheating, but as educators, sometimes we just let it be. Now, mas malaki po ang risk natin ngayon pag nag-cheating ang students natin. Kasi po, mahirap na po ang transition ng lessons online, tapos pag nag-cheating pa sila, baka totally wala na sila maintindihan. So again, try to make our questions objective and subjective at the same time. Twofold questions. Okay, so you'll get to practice this in the Google Classroom. And if you post a EduRescue, maybe I can go through some of them, then maybe comment also. Pero hindi po ako official part ng EduRescue. I'm just helping out. So, okay, so try it out po. I found it more effective. And it's also fun at your end because it makes you think also. What are the important questions I have to ask my students in order to check their understanding? Next, plagiarism. Okay, so plagiarism. Malaking problema po ito. Plagiarism in an undergrad and postgrad context, so pag sa college or masters, pag nahuli po kayo nagpa-plagiarize, instantly expelled po. Okay? Even if mali lang po yung pag-cite nyo ng sources or mali po yung citation, mali po yung way na sinabi kung kanino galing, you can get expelled. Okay? Depending on the gravity of the situation. Now, sa undergrad po, elementary levels. Sa elementary level po, actually more of high school na po to. We have to start training our students to cite their sources and make sure not to plagiarize their content. How can we do that? First off, the most important thing is modeling. So whenever we post online content in our online classroom, make sure we cite our sources. Okay? As teachers, as educators, it's very important to. Okay? More so that we're doing this purely online class, definitely may mga content po tayo galing online, we have to cite it. Cite it properly and make it clear na sinite nyo po. Okay? If you want formatting, you can go online and search for different types of formatting. Generally, in the Philippines, we use APA and MLA format. Okay, so sa high school level po, very important na we start training our students to cite their sources properly. Kasi po, pagdating sa college, for example, nag-UP Diliman po ang estudyante natin, malaking problem ang plagiarism. So we want to make sure our students know how to cite their sources, even outside research classes. So may mga classes po, I think English, they teach citation, they teach how to do the APA formatting. They have to practice it in the other classes as well. Okay, so this was an issue for me growing up because I did not have the patience to do citation. So pagdating ko po sa masters, postgrad, nahirapan po ako sa start. Pero naging habit ko na po na every time I go online, even if just, a certain idea. For example po, nag-research po ako about Rizal. Then may isa ako nakitang article sa Philippine Star Opinion Poll, isa-cite ko na po yun. Even if indirectly, hindi ko naman po pinote or basta kumuha po ako ng maliit na idea, isa-cite ko na po. Okay? Very important that we train our students to be academically integrated. Okay. So, however, there are some ways that we can check for plagiarism online. Now, I have different techniques, okay? Just make sure you don't share to your students, okay? So I'm not sure the consequences of plagiarism in the context of K-12, but I believe that if you are caught plagiarizing, you have to return the paper. Then I think deduction or zero, or either the student has to redo it. So it's up to you, up to your institution, what the consequences are. Now, to check for plagiarizing, there are simple ways. So one way, my favorite way to do it is as the student submits their paper, I go through the paper, okay? So ideally, we know our students' writing style. So each person po, may certain writing style po tayo. Parang signature po natin yan. The way we write is different from the other person. It will always be different. May certain difference yan. Pag hindi nyo po alam ang writing style, okay lang. As long as you read through the paper, then you feel that there are certain parts na feeling nyo po copy-pasted or maybe from Wikipedia, which Wikipedia is not a credible source when it comes to the college level. Make sure we tell them that they cannot use Wikipedia. You copy-paste a certain part of the paragraph, then you paste it in Google search. Okay, so I don't have a paper to show you. So for example, yung paper po, nakuha nyo, kuha po kayo ng isang paragraph or maybe 3 sentences, highlight, then copy and paste. Okay? So, let's try it. Sige. Baka matry ko po dito. Sige. Let's go through this one. For example, I want to check the integrity of this sentence. For example, part 2 ito ng paragraph. So what I can do is highlight, right-click, copy, then go to Google. Okay. Then we just paste it. Okay. Lalabas po yan. Now, this is what we're going to be presented with. Okay. You will know if the content is plagiarized if nakita niyo po naka-bold lahat yan. Bold, bold, bold. Naka-emphasize po lahat ng letters or words. It means plagiarized po yan. So once you see something plagiarized, you can go to the article and actually read it and check if it's directly quoted. So from there, you can decide kung ano yung gagawin. There are other apps you can use. So there is Grammarly Plagiarism Checker. Okay. You can just go here. So yung kinopy po natin kanina, enter lang, paste, then scan. Okay? There's not enough text. Okay? So if mas mahaba po yung text, isa-scan niya po, pero may word limit po yan. Okay? That's why I like using Google. Kasi po, wala pong word limit, pero when you're checking plagiarism, it's very important that you do it maybe every few sentences, not the whole thing, not the whole paper. Kasi madali lang po mag-paraphrase. So what you can do is just highlight, copy paste parts of the paragraph, then check for plagiarism. Okay. So very important po again to train our students in academic integrity, because when it comes to the college level, unforgiving po ang mga schools natin. Okay. So I've had students po na directly nagka-copy paste, which unfortunately mahirap po i-correct pagdating sa college level unless na talagang specify yung punishments. Okay? So what I would usually do is actually give them a second chance. Especially now the pandemic, I give back their papers. I do not grade them. I mark them as incomplete. Okay? So next is feedback. Okay? Feedback is an integral part of knowledge formation and knowledge checking as well. Okay? So it's a way to measure learning outcomes. So providing feedback is an essential part of ensuring the students that they are reaching the desired knowledge. So in Google Forms, when you do an exam, you can provide feedbacks na, for example, for multiple choice questions. If they submit a paper, a response paper, to provide feedback, you just send back the paper with the feedback on the bottom. For other activities like vlogs and whatnot, you can always just comment. Okay. So discussion boards are probably the most accessible tools to provide feedback. Okay. So for example, sa Google Classroom po, may feature po yan na submit assignment. Then after the student submits, then maybe a day or 2 days after, or maybe after checking, you can provide feedback after. Then inform the students that you have provided feedback for them. Okay. So returning of corrected essays with feedback, including peer reviews. Okay. Provide rubrics for grading. Very important po ang rubrics. Then we can use our live sessions, like Zoom po, ganito, to clarify key points. Okay, so here's an example. This is actually just an example rubric. This is not official. So here you can see, when I provide grading rubrics, I do not give 1, 2, 3, 4. I do not, kasi usually po, pag gumagawa ang rubrics ang ibang teachers, pag gumagawa po ng rubrics ang ibang teachers is they provide the numerical grade. I personally do not give numerical grade to my peer review activities. Okay, because peer reviews are very subjective. Paano kung ayaw ng student yung isang student, di ba? Ibabagsak na lang niya. And I've personally experienced this. During my times in high school, if I didn't like my classmate, I would just give them a low score. Okay, so just write, on the left is your grading component, your right is the level. Okay, then maybe you can assign grades, but ideally, the end all of the grading should still be from you. This is just to see if maybe yung student na nagpe-peer review, naiintindihan niya ang pagsusulat ng klase niya. Okay, so here I specified kung ano yung mga components for excellent, good, satisfactory, needs improvement, then encourage the students to write the other comments and suggestions. Okay? Very important po itong part na to. Kasi dito po nila ma-express ang pagkakaintindi nila and whatnot. Okay? Finally, we have fact-checking. Okay? So fact-checking is a very vital practice in the educational field. So beside from citing our sources, it's important that we fact-check. Okay, so fact-checking is not only for the students, but also for us as educators. Okay. So as educators in the 21st century, now that we have online multimedia tools, there is no more excuse to give our students wrong information. Okay. So it's always important that when we give our students information, the information we give them is 100% accurate and true. Okay. So for example, you see a certain content, for example, sa textbook po, may content doon na medyo outdated na. Aside from reporting it to the governing body, which is Department of Education, you can actually go online and search for the information yourself. So a simple Google search will come a long way. Okay, a simple Google search will probably tell you if the information is correct or not. So again, you are the experts. You would know which information would be true and which information would be false. Okay, so now that we are shifting to online, it's very important that we fact check our content as well as our students' content. Okay, so digital content in today's education is very prevalent. We use it regularly now. Even in face-to-face classes, we still use digital content regularly. So we have to ensure the truthfulness of our content through fact checking. So aside from our educational references like our textbooks, let's incorporate digital tools. So simple Google search will maybe lead you to a research paper, a journal article, an academic journal to check the integrity of the content. Okay. So some good education practice is, for example, what I do is when I set up my module, then of course my discussion part doon na or reading material na I personally wrote. So sa graduate level po, sa discussion, instead of giving a reading material lang, we give a reading material, then after we discuss the reading material through maybe a short article in the Google Classroom. Then after writing that, I always fact check. I highlight the key concepts, then I check if tama yung sinasabi ko. So reading accredited and published research papers. So madami po tayong online resources. So we have the DepEd library, I think, the UP library. We have the Ateneo library. We have international libraries. Then cross-checking content with established educational websites. So this is the easiest probably. So if you're teaching world history, then you are not sure of a certain aspect of world history. So we have to admit as educators, we don't know everything naman. There are times that we have to do our own research in order to teach the students. Kasi mahirap din naman na buong world history alam natin. So sometimes we have to refer to the books. So maybe you check the book, then if you, after check the book, you check a website that talks about world history or talks about a certain topic. Now, mas reliable po ang educational websites and reference papers rather than YouTube videos kasi may mga wrong information po sa YouTube videos. So I talk about this part kasi po I've seen a trend when it comes to, fake information on the internet. So we have to make sure our sources are credible. Okay? And again, don't forget to cite your source. Okay, with that, thank you very much. And I hope you learned something. And I hope that, you started forming ideas na on how to create your online classes and as well as how to apply your assessments, formative or summative. Okay. So right now we will do a Q&A. Okay, so I think on the Facebook you can also do, yes, there's a Q&A button. Okay, so let me go through everything lang. Let me prepare. So, okay, so let me check. Okay, so difference between a pre-test and a diagnostic test. Okay, so just to let you know, wala po akong educational background. So very, yung pre-test and diagnostic test, based on what I understand from the words, a diagnostic test highlights the student's weaknesses and strengths on certain topics. Okay, so a pre-test is maybe a test you do before a test. So I'm not really sure. I'm sorry. Maybe you can refer to someone of educational background. But yes, a diagnostic test is basically from, mas madedefine ko po siya. Diagnostic test is a way to test a student's strengths and weaknesses. Now, when it comes to online asynchronous classes, you can do a diagnostic test if you need to via Google Forms. Okay, there are other tools you can use. Maybe you can do a diagnostic project. Okay, so that, kasi minsan po medyo time consuming ang Google Forms and we don't have enough time. So if that's the case, maybe we can do a diagnostic project, like maybe to check for their prior understanding, prior knowledge, and check where they are, where they need to improve, and where they need to where they excel at. So a diagnostic test, maybe diagnostic project, sorry, maybe a vlog, maybe a graphic organizer, like a mind map, a presentation, and etc. Madami pong ideas, so let's come up with those ideas. I saw someone post sa chat, can you use TikTok? I highly discourage using TikTok in general po. Kasi marami pong issue ang TikTok when it comes to privacy and information sharing. So, I don't really advise using TikTok. Maybe if you want to do something fun, if you want to do something engaging, maybe you can ask the students to use Instagram. Kasi po, I personally do not use TikTok. I do not like how TikTok has been established. I do not like the way it is structured. So I use Instagram po. Maybe you can ask them to use Facebook Live. Okay, so very engaging po yan. Okay, sir, do we have to record all the students' scores in a formative assessment? Again, scoring of formative assessment is very, very controversial. Hindi po lahat ng teachers mag-agree sa akin na i-grade dapat. Pero ako po, I do this to give the students a chance to pull up their grades. Now, to score formative assessments, there are different ways. So sa Google Classroom, may feature po yan, yung turn-in assignment feature. Then I use it to compute the grades. So basically, when I grade po kasi percentage-based ako. Hindi po ako nagbibigay ng 20/20 kung hindi siya 20%. Pag yung content itself, for example, 5% lang po, ang grading system ko sa kanya 5/5. So it's to help me grade faster also, because I hate math. I'm so sorry. I don't like doing working with numbers. So that's how I grade my students. So medyo mas intimidating po ang grading system ko. So it's up to you po. Okay, it's up to you. What to do if the test results and the grades of the students? Okay, so if the test results are not very good and the grades of the students are very low, okay, one way is to you can recap the lesson. So maybe you can use the live classes to actually clarify the key concepts na. And that is why formative assessments are very important. Kasi po, we don't want to find out na nahihirapan ng students natin sa summative kasi mahirap po mag-backtrack. So that's why formative assessments are important kasi po, it tells you in what level the students are understanding already. So again, make use of your formative assessments. I would go far and say that formative assessments at times can be more important than the summative. Kasi po, ang importance po ng asynchronous classes is that we build cumulative knowledge. Okay? Cumulative. Binibuild po natin yan. Okay? So, sa summative, tinetest po natin yung overall construction. Formative po is sine-check po natin ang parts, ang integrity ng each maybe few blocks of constructions. So, it's very important po ang formative natin. Okay? We have to check so that when it comes to the summative assessment time, mas klaro, mas complete na po ang construction. So you have to think of students as maybe a building that you have to construct. So every few bricks you put, you have to check the integrity. So I'm sure they don't do that sa construction, pero po, it's what we're doing as educators right now. What is a recommended way of measuring learning outcomes? So again, it depends if you're doing a formative or summative. So let's talk about formative. Formative assessment, aside from Google Forms, you can use maybe have the students write response papers after showing a video on YouTube plus a short discussion. Maybe you can ask the students to create a diagram or a drawing, ask the students to illustrate their understanding, or ask the students to look for an image, then discuss. There are different activities you can do. So this is where education creativity comes in. Now, I cannot give you everything that we can do kasi po, hindi ko rin po mabibigay. It will be really up to you as the educators to be creative kasi kayo po ang nakakaalam kung ano yung interest ng students ninyo. And kayo po makakaalam kung ano po yung capacity nila when it comes to learning. Okay? Yes, is it possible to give long tests, quarterly tests in online classes? Definitely. This is where Google Forms comes in. So Google Forms, again, very objective-based siya. Pero again, when you are giving a long test or quarterly test, very important po ang integrity and hindi mahirapan mag-cheating ang students. So one way we can do this is to do twofold questions. So aside from the multiple choice question part or matching type or fill in the blanks, we give essays. Okay. Even if our subject is not essay-oriented, very objective-based ang subject natin, we have to give essays. Kasi po, mahirap po mag-cheating sa essay. Yun lang po talaga yung reason na yun. So when you give your question, let me give an example again. Ito po. Okay, here's an example question. What is or are the books Jose Rizal is famous for? And what impact did these books leave on our society? So yung first part, what is or are the books Jose Rizal is famous for, is the objective part of the question. Then, what impact is medyo subjective na po based on their understanding. So they have to analyze the current context of the Philippines. Okay, how did these books impact our patriotism, our nationalism, and our pride to be Filipino? Okay. Next question po. After the activity, can the teacher choose any of the assessment tools in answering present this online? After the activity, can we choose any of the assessment tools in answering the activity? I don't understand the question po. So, Miss Alma, if you can retype the question. May nakukulong po ba sa plagiarism? I think so. Kasi po, let's be honest, sa Philippines po, hindi po gano'n, ang intellectual property po is not, intellectual property monitoring is not as strong as we have in other countries. But sa ibang countries po, may nakukulong. Very, very important po to avoid plagiarism. Okay. So, even if hindi po makukulong yung student or hindi po ma-expel, as educators, it's our responsibility to make sure our students follow the rules and respect intellectual property. Okay? It's more about respect na rin po. Okay? Oh, sorry. I'll stop sharing. I'll keep my screen on. Okay? After can I use the Piano Tiles app? For what purpose po? You need to know the purpose in order to use it as an assessment. If it's just for fun or just for engagement without any sort of educational purpose, it's not going to be productive po. Any tips on creating periodic tests using online platforms? Okay, so here we have a question. Any tips in creating periodic tests or long tests using online platforms? Again, we can use Google Forms when we're doing an objective with an essay test. paano masasecure ng teacher na ang learner mismo ang nag-accomplish or sumasagot ng exam? Okay. This is where the code of conduct and ethics come in. Now, right now, medyo mahirap po. May mga applications po na chine-check ang students, how they track the students' movement online. Pero I don't like it because it's highly pervasive. In short, it invades the students' privacy po. So, right, again, the best thing you can do is to orient our questions in such a way na it's both objective and subjective. Na mahihirapan po mag-cheating ang students. Okay? This cannot assure that they won't cheat, but this will somehow safeguard your content from the students actually cheating on it. Another way is to actually have a live session dedicated for an exam. So this is actually what they do for law. If they have an exam, then they want to check if the students are cheating or not. They ask the students to go on Zoom or to go on Google Meet and have the teacher monitor the students while they are taking the exam. Okay, so there are other ways to do this. There are applications online. So may mga anti-cheating software po dyan, anti-cheating applications, but I highly suggest against it. Kasi again, it's very pervasive. So it invades the students' privacy. Yes, sir, do you recommend any collaborative work? Yes, definitely. Collaborative work is actually a very effective way of doing online classes, conducting online classes. Kasi po, one of the main features ng online classes is collaborative learning or cooperated learning environment. So basically, you have the students creating their understanding together. So when you have collaborative work, tendency po ay they will discuss certain topics amongst themselves, which will then build a common understanding. So it's easier for you then po to control and to manipulate and to check if their understandings are correct. Okay. What if after administering your assessments to your students, you found out one of your students failed slow-paced learner? How do you handle it in asynchronous? Okay, so if I have a slow-paced learner, so yung beauty po ng asynchronous classes is that it places everyone on an even playing field. What does this mean? If you are a slow-paced learner or a fast-paced learner, mas mahirap po i-track yan. Basically, ang modules po, we upload maybe every week or every 2 weeks. So it will depend on your content. So when we upload certain content, we have to set an expectation na at this certain time frame, matapos nila. So maybe you have 1 week to finish this module or 2 weeks. So even if you're fast-paced or slow-paced, you have to set the expectation already. Now, if a student is maybe slow-paced, okay, what I like doing is actually setting up consultations. So maybe you can dedicate 1 hour or 2 hours per week for consultation time. So maybe you can set up a consultation room, then send the link to your students, then have the students consult with you. This is so that you can guide the slow-paced learners. Okay, so pinaka-important ngayon is we are able to guide them without affecting the integrity of our content. So we have to make sure our content is still complete, well organized, while still being able to accommodate all kinds of students. Okay, so distance learning is good, but how can we ensure that the ideas come from the students and not their guardians? Again, we have to establish that we have to make sure our content is motivating. We have to make sure na maiengganyo sila mag-participate sa class. This is wherein our creative digital tools come in. So YouTube videos, okay? So younger students sometimes would ask help from their parents. Ideally, the parents do help, but they do not give the answer. Kasi for the sake of their kids din yan. So to make sure, you have to, again, make sure the content is rich, deep, and as well as we have to make sure it's engaging. So that yung students mismo ang may engage na gawin yung content natin. They can be feeded. So if quizzes are forms. Okay, so some sources say that formative assessments should not be graded, but you said they can be graded. So if quizzes are quizzes po kasi, quizzes ideally are summative. Kasi po you're doing a quiz for a certain topic na or a certain module. Formative assessments are very small activities you can place in between your modules to check for their understanding. It's not necessarily a quiz. So if you do a quiz po, ideally sa online environment, you do it at the end of a module. You do not do it in between. You will do a formative assessment in between, which is maybe a short response paper, a short discussion board, a short debate. Okay, it's up to you po how you want to conduct your formative assessment. So these are, again, I put bonus points just to help my students out. Online Philippine Library. Alam ko po ang UP Diliman Library is free. I'm not sure. Philippine Library. So you have to check online because I usually, in post-grad school po, we use international libraries. So I'm not really sure about Philippine Library. Philippine Library. I think may online po yan na libre. Let me check po. Yes, University Library by the UP Diliman is actually free. Let me check. Or baka kailangan po ng subscription. Okay, so I'm not really sure, but I know this can be accessed if you are from a school institution. So you have to check with your institution also. How do we measure the mastery? So, okay. So the measure of mastery, okay. When using Mentimeter, it will not give you the overall picture, but it can give you an idea. So to check the mastery of your students, there are better tools than Mentimeter. Mentimeter can be used, but however, it will only give you a small idea of the overall construction. This can be used for formative, which is okay for formative. Pero if you want to check overall mastery po, you have to use the summative assessment. Can you share, sir, if we have a way to check our pupils? Check in what context po? There are different ways of checking naman po. Okay, how do we manage divide those slow learners without stifling the interest? Again, slow learners versus fast learners. Asynchronous classes, you place them on an even playing field. So you have to set a time frame for each module. Okay, so for example, this module is good for 1 week. No matter if you're fast or slow, the students are expected to go through it now. Just make sure the time frame you give them is reasonable, okay, and according to the syllabus naman. So right now, we have to give a little more time to our students. So if normally this content you will cover for 2 days, maybe you want to do it for 1 week. Long test and summative test. I consider the long test as a kind of summative assessment. Long test will cover maybe 2 modules, 3 modules, 3, which is considered a summative assessment. After activity or lesson, can the students choose any of the assessment tools? Yes. If you ask them to do a project, to check their understanding as formative or summative, you can have them use their own assessment tools. It allows them to experiment also. So encourage naman po yan. So we don't have any questions. Okay,
Hey,
I'm checking.
Eric. Yeah,
Yes.
I posted in the chat some questions from FB.
Okay. Facebook comments. One of the topic na needed ko ay tungkol sa assessments. First time na mag-handle ng pang-grade on this platform. Ang galing. Let me stop my share. Sana may examples or scenarios pa. Okay, so again, there are 2 types of assessments. There are formative and summative assessments. So let me give some examples. These are just some examples. Again, they are not the these are not the only examples. So formative assessment ideas, maybe have the students watch a YouTube video, then after have them submit a reaction paper, or maybe you have a reading, Maybe you have a reading, then maybe watch a video after, then write a reaction paper. You can also use different applications such as Mentimeter to check for prior knowledge. So instead of doing a diagnostic test, you can use Mentimeter. Okay. Have the students look for memes or photos or funny photos online, then relate those photos to the actual lesson. Then have them explain. You can use discussion boards and have them exchange comments with each other. You can also use social media to ask them to post vlogs in relation to the topic. Then finally, you can have peer reviews. Okay, for summative, you have your term papers, maybe a research paper. Creating a vlog to explain concepts and ideas can be used instead of a handwritten paper, handwritten exam. Group presentations, creating brochure, and friendly debate. How can a teacher simplify his recording students' output if formative assessments are done? Okay, so that is why if you have the Google Classroom po, the Google Classroom has the turn in the grading system already. So you just have to upload a quiz assessment, then assign a grade to it, then have the students upload their outputs. Can we use plagiarism checker? Definitely. One way is to highlight certain parts of a paragraph, then copy, then pasting it on Google. So there are Filipino articles out there. Now, if it's translated, that's where the problem comes in. Kasi hindi ko po sure kung paano po magta-translate ang Google. Because I've never taught in Filipino. So I'm not really sure when it comes to getting English content, then translating it to Tagalog. We have to check that po. I'm not really sure, I'm sorry. But again, plagiarism checker, you can use for Filipino. Sir, most of my students don't have PCs. Okay, so my students can do hands-on activities. So if they don't have PCs, pero may access po sila sa Google Classroom, you can still apply some of the formative assessments. So when you teach a computer-related subjects, marami pong websites ang I'm sure you know a lot of websites that actually are helpful. So mga typing tests, ganon. Pero po, hindi po rin kasi ako familiar sa computer-related subjects. You have to look for applications po na will adapt well to the Google Classroom. So if they have access to Google Classroom, that's already a huge step na. So once they have access, you put in your content. Then if you have hands-on activities, maybe hands-on activities for computer. Kasi po, usually I will ask like a typing test. Okay, marami pong typing test online. Yung mga nagpapaunahan makatapos ng paragraphs, ganon. There are applications online po. So I'm really sorry, I'm not really familiar with computer-related subject when it comes to coming up with activities. But most importantly is they have access to the Google Classroom. What you can do po is do a screencast session. So maybe if your students do not have access to it, but you have, what you can do is record your screen, then do a voiceover while you record the screen. So parang ano po yan, narration po. So habang nagdi-discuss po kayo, may ginagawa kayo sa desktop nyo.
Hi, Eric.
Yes.
Just one last question. I'm posting it now, and then you can wrap up.
Okay. Okay, so you mentioned a while ago that you don't give. Okay. So you mentioned a while ago, I don't give deadlines. Okay. So the only outputs I don't give deadlines are the ones that I feel would need more understanding. So for example, yung lesson po is very theoretical and it has a lot of components to it, not just the module. Hindi ko po siya lalagyan ng deadline. Pero ina-expect ko po, I usually tell my students to submit it before the end of the quarter, end of the semester. So this is to make sure that they still submit. Then I also specify the graded component. So usually, pag 20% po siya or 30% of the total grade, I do not put a deadline because I want them to work on it throughout the quarter or throughout the semester. Okay, so I always specify the grading component. So very important po na alam ng students kung kaano kalaki sa grades po. Okay, So wrapping up, thank you very much. We're sorry na medyo nag-extend po. Yes, so all in all, I thank you. I thank everyone for attending today's session. And it's nice for me as a young educator to see the education field working together towards a common goal, which is to transition to online learning during this time of pandemic. Again, my name is Eric, and thank you very much. And I hope to hear from you soon when it comes to the EduRescue program. Thank you.